Morita.
Mr. Pat Morita. Oh, yeah.
Pat Morita, ladies and gentlemen.
Lenny Bruce's mother named him the Hip Nip, but he hung on because now all of a sudden he had an angle.
He would tend to do the same show over again. And then he couldn't figure out why he wasn't getting laughs.
I don't think he paid much attention to the rules of the game. You know, kind of did what he wanted to do.
He really embraced the things that many of us run away from. He ran to it.
He had a lot of inner demons. He struggled a lot with depression, and he was drinking too much. I think he was doing too much drugs.
He was drinking so much that I went to the line producer and said, I'm scared to death he's going to fall off a cliff.
And he was stumbling and he fell flat on his face.
That was when it really, really hit home, and he realized, I've got a big problem.
No, I hear you great. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I think we're in the same city. Are you in Las Vegas?
Yes, I am.
So am
yes,
I.
I am.
Born and raised.
Really?
Yes.
That's unusual.
It is.
I've been here for going on 26 years.
54.
You probably weren't even born yet. Just kidding.
Well, my family came here in the 50s, you know, so.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah, so I'm Generation X. I'm the only one in my family born in Las Vegas, but yeah, I've been here my entire life. And like Red Fox and other celebrities, I lived in a neighborhood called Scotch 80s. And
okay.
Yeah, so I Rancho in Charleston, if you know the area. And
yes, I do.
My neighbors were Jerry Lewis and Ted Binion and Don Wells and the Cashmans and Steve Wynn in the early days. And I've always heard about Pat Morita in Las Vegas. I never had a chance to meet him, which is really unfortunate. But I always was proud to call him one of our citizens.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, this was always his home away from home. This and Hawaii, you know, but he's originally from California, as I am too. But you know, he got fed up with the Hollywood scene at some point, and that's when we moved to Hawaii for a short time. But then the commuting back and forth, because all the work was on the mainland, became too much. So the next best place to live would be Vegas. You know, you're only an hour away from LA, and it was perfect for us. Yeah.
And I have my family married into a Hawaiian family 60, 70 years ago. So I have tremendous relatives in the Hawaiian Islands too. And we have a place on the Big Island. So I just really can relate to Pat's life, you know, Las Vegas and Hawaii. So the best of both worlds.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Well, I finished the documentary this morning. I wanted it fresh in my mind. And I learned so much about Pat. I'm Generation X. So Happy Days was my life when I was a child. I mean, it was the world to me. And I was fortunate enough to meet some of the cast members, you know, going through life. I never got to meet Pat. But this documentary, what I loved about it, it not only showed his success, but also his demons too. You know, it showed him as a human being. And, you know, and one thing that just came across is the love for this man, no matter who you turn to.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he was very, very, very much loved.
When did you realize?
Go ahead.
When did you realize his humor? I mean, when did you say, wow, he is just a funny guy?
Oh, well, first of all, I've known him practically all my life. I've known him since I was a kid because he was a friend of the family's. And to my aunt's credit, Sally Marr, who was Lenny Bruce's mother, at the time was managing comics and different people. And she's the one that saw the funniness in him. And she always looked for the unique talent. And she's the one that tagged him the hip nip. He said, you know, you're very unusual. There aren't any other Japanese comics, you know, and to make you a star, you know. So I used to see him come and go all the time, and he was funny. He was hilarious. He was Uncle Pat. And if anyone had told me then that I would end up marrying him someday, I'd say, are you crazy? It's Uncle Pat, you know. But he was always a character, always funny. Yeah, he was just hilarious.
And did he always embrace the character of Mr. Miyagi, playing him multiple times? And, you know, actors will go through an entire lifetime without a role like that will identify him. But sometimes actors shy away from it, but he seems like he embraced it, didn't he?
He did, very much so. He did. You know, he was terrified at first because it was his first dramatic role. But to my aunt's credit, again, she's the one that said, you know, I see a great actor in you, because she knew the demons that he held all his life, you know. And she said, you know, use it, use that past pain, use those turbulent, terrible years, you know, as a child, you know, in the sanitarium. And he suffered a lot of loss, so he could identify with Miyagi, and he drew upon that past pain, you know, to do the performance that he did, which was brilliant.
And I always thought he was a trailblazer because, you know, in the early days in the 60s and 70s of Hollywood, he was stereotyped. He had to do those Chinese or Japanese, those really demeaning characters, almost like blackface and what African Americans have been going through in cinema. But you know what? It's just like Martin Luther King said to Nichelle Nichols, you're there, you're on the screen, you're representing us, you know, so stay there. And I noticed that some of the early days when I was a kid, Shakiest Gun in the West, you know, 30 Mile and Millie. And I just I loved how in the documentary it shows that he did that, but he didn't take himself seriously, but he also was aware of what was going on.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he played the cliche, you know. And it's funny because when he first got the role in Happy Days as Arnold, the producers were concerned because he was playing a Chinese and yet he was Japanese heritage. And at first they said, well, how are we going to explain that? You know, at the time, I think the Asians were, you know, rising up, and, you know, the Mexicans and the Latinos, and it was that whole period. And so he said, oh, I know how to explain it. I could say my mother was Chinese and my father was Japanese. There you go. But I mean, no, but he came across that all the time. And that's why his comedy was self-deprecating, you know. I mean, he just made fun of himself, you know.
Well, he was in the golden age of stand-up comedy. He was not only a trailblazer because of his material, but did he ever recall like Pat's favorite moment during his stand-up career? Was there a certain performance or a place he played that he talked about?
The Playboy Club. When the Playboy Club was open, when the Playboy Club had when Hugh Hefner had his he had a show. It was I think it was called Playboy's Penthouse. And he used to have, you know, up and coming comics like Pat and oh my God, Red Fox and Lenny Bruce, as a matter of fact. So he, you know, that was his favorite time. I think that was his favorite thing to do.
And for you, do you have a favorite memento or a favorite thing that Pat's? I know you have a large collection of everything he collected, but is there just one thing that stands out for you?
Him. The man. not his collection, not even his Miyagi persona, just the man himself, you know. But it was really, really important for me to tell his truth. And I think we succeeded to do that in this film. It's all documented fact. He started to write a biography a couple of years before his passing, but he never completed it. But, you know, and he started, because I kept telling him, you know, honey, you have such an unusual, incredible childhood and history, you know, it needs to be told, because anybody can Google Pat Morita and up comes his career life, you know, but so few know about his past, you know, and the demons that he never dealt with. It's nothing short of a miracle that he succeeded the way he did. Nothing short of a miracle.
I really admired how in the documentary you told stories about Pat, obviously, but on that radio show, and you just seemed like you were having a conversation with friends.
Yeah, I felt very comfortable. Well, I'm very blessed with two very talented filmmakers, Kevin Derrick, who directed, and Oscar Alvarez, who produced it. We were on the same page from the very beginning. We had the same vision. And so basically, you know, when it was very cathartic, first of all, when I was being interviewed for the film, and it was emotional, to say the least, because I had to relive a lot of it. But it was important for me to tell his story, you know, and the pages that he wrote, the few pages that he wrote, I think it was like 100 pages of his biography. I think those words have transcended onto film. That was my goal. I didn't want to embellish. I didn't want to make anything up. because it was a promise I made to him before he died. He said, I want you to tell my story, but I want you to be candid and I want you to be honest. I want you to show the good, bad, the ugly. Because he said, if I can help one poor bastard, and these are his words, if I can help one poor bastard through this disease, you know, alcoholism and not dealing with your demons and all that, he said, then I would have felt I'd done something good for the world. And I thought that was so honorable because he wasn't concerned about his accolades or successes or his achievements. That was more important to him, that he could deliver a message to someone watching or listening or reading that would help them, you know? So
Well,
that's why it was so important for me to get it right, you know?
You were a rock. You were his inspiration. You were his love of his life. So, and it all shines through this documentary, and it just makes me feel closer to Pat, one of my childhood idols.
Oh, that's so nice. That's a great compliment. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Good luck with the documentary. And I usually tell at the end of my interview, come visit us in Las Vegas, but you're already here.
I'm here. So. I'm here. We're neighbors.
We are. Thank you so much for being here in Las Vegas.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.